Hello, this is Amy here, and I have with me Kurt Jensen. We both have our own podcast. We thought, what better to get together and do a collaboration. We got to meet each other at the recent SIOR spring event in Amelia Island, Florida, which I had not been to an SIOR event before, but it was awesome. And if we could always have dress code like that, it would be amazing. Kurt will introduce himself, but I'm Amy Calandrino, and I'm the owner of Beyond Commercial. We're a full-service brokerage and advisory firm here in Orlando, Florida. We serve the needs of small to medium-sized businesses as well as families in the Central Florida area and beyond. I say that because I'm able to collaborate with some other great folks across the nation like Kurt. So outside of doing commercial real estate, of course, I have this podcast. I have 2 toddlers, and I just like staying involved in the community. And that's about it. What about you, Kurt?
So,
what are you up
my
to?
name is Kurt Jensen. I'm with Kessinger Hunter Commercial Real Estate in Kansas City. And as Amy said, I'm an SIOR as well with Amy. But I'm with Kessinger Hunter. We're a full service commercial real estate firm out of Kansas City. I'm a principal of the firm, and I focus on industrial brokerage. So I'm really in that warehouse and manufacturing world, working with distributors and that lot. But Kansas City born and raised. I'm a big time Chiefs fan. I mean, who can't be? And also been excited about the Royals start this year. So, but excited to jump on with Amy. And as she said, we both have our own podcasts. I've got one here I do with my dad, Dan Jensen, who's an SIOR, and my brother, Stuart Jensen, who's newer to the business. So excited to collaborate. And I think Amy and I sat down next to each other over a lunch hour at Amelia Island, and we both realized we both had podcasts and connected further and thought it would be fun to get together. So thanks for having me on virtually. This is my first time doing a virtual one, so I'm going to learn how to better do it and get guests from out of town on our podcast. So excited to jump on.
And I actually have it set up that I can have people here.
There you go.
If I want to.
Yeah.
I just don't have many people in Orlando that I talk to.
Yeah.
So I think I've only had 2 or 3 guests in person so far. And out of the 54 or 55 episodes so far, they've all been, virtual. So it's kind of been interesting. I really like having the in-person, and I'm planning on doing some more episodes in person and being more intentional about that. Because I think they call it IRL in real life.
Yeah.
So you make these friends.
New terms that came about.
Online.
Yeah, new terms from after the pandemic, right? It's
Right.
When we got so used to virtual.
Well, yeah. So we know what you do today. Why don't we both kind of talk a little bit about how we got into our respective roles, and then we can talk a little bit about the day to day, and maybe throw some mindset in there too, of course.
Yeah. No, I like it. Well, and so how long have you been doing Beyond Commercial?
So Beyond Commercial was formed in 2010. It was not Beyond Commercial at first. It was the worst kind of brokerage ever. Well, I'm not going to say worst, but I was I thought I was going to be Resi-mercial when I first started. Actually, I meant to do that. I thought I could be this concierge, solution for busy professionals. And I would have this relationship. And I was actually called Silver because I added value, Leaf because I wanted to help people grow.
Okay.
And obviously, if you're pitching that to a CFO, you're not going to go very far. So it's once I decided to start growing and stuff, I was hitting a lot of opposition. And also I only did one residential deal and I didn't like it that much.
Yeah.
I was just, it was my skill set was far not that it's not, I'm not going to say it's easy, because I think there's different challenges between residential and commercial. I think residential, would be challenging is the hours that are involved, constant nights and weekends.
And the emotions, a lot more emotion.
Oh, a lot of emotions. Yeah. And I get some emotions too. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching a soap opera, but not to the same extent. But so I did that. And then 2016, I rebranded to Beyond Commercial. 2018, I got my CCIM. 2022, I got my SIOR. And it's myself and 2 advisors. And I have a few like employees and contractors as well that like serve in marketing, HR, and all the other parts to run a brokerage. But so yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm the broker owner, but then I am the leading producer within the brokerage, which is really fun.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's awesome.
but it's quite an evolution. I've been through like an evolution as I've gone around, and I've kind of figured out who are the best fit clients. Especially having this podcast and working a lot with mindset. I've been able to kind of differentiate givers and takers and those with a growth mindset,
Yep.
those that don't have like have a scarcity mindset, and who's coachable, who's not coachable. And I find that like I work the best and I can provide the most value to like growth minded, entrepreneurs like myself. And so I've kind of developed this niche, and if they, listen to me, or, generally I can get them where they want to go and beyond.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's as I've gotten more established and I feel like I've gotten into my next leg of my career. That's one thing I've really enjoyed is having more of a choice of working with like-minded individuals and folks that you see the same vision and have the same passion as them, and also see you as a partner, because early
Yes.
going, it's easy to just be magnetized towards any opportunity and kind of bend over backwards to try and kind of earn your stripes. And it can be a tougher part of the career for sure. But it also, at the end of the day, I think most brokers would say they're also probably not going to turn away from an opportunity to help on a sale or lease transaction. So it's a double-edged sword a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've had last year, fourth quarter was one of my worst quarters like ever, and I think it had to do with client retention. And I ended up with like 3 clients that I let myself take because like I felt like, oh, this is a great opportunity, this is in a great location, but they were all. It was so interesting when I looked back. All 3 of them had sob stories and why they were in the situation that I needed to help them out with. They all kind of like were blaming all these outside circumstances and all these different things. And then anyways, like, especially one of them, like just turned around completely, about face. And it was really like challenging. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, for me, I've started to say no, like if it's not like a right fit, and I start getting the red flags.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do though, but sometimes all of a sudden I say no to that one thing and then I get 2 more things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you turn your attention and start, follow up with some folks maybe you would have been too busy to follow up with because you were working on a deal, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I stumble on some better opportunities. So.
Yes. I think that's what I've been, after that happened, definitely this year, I've like looked at what pipeline I already have and the opportunities that I already have. And I'm like, oh, you got a lot of business to like work on. Why don't you like work on this rather than letting yourself have shiny toy, like I call it like a shiny toy, like syndrome, where you're like distracted by this.
And it just sits on the mantle.
Thing.
You can't even use it.
Yeah. So, well, I assume you got into the business because it's a family business, or did you think you were going to do something else, or did you always want to do commercial real estate?
So I think I kind of always knew. I did grow up. So my dad, Dan, is one of the principals at Kessinger Hunter as well. And he's been here about 35 years. So I grew up with, we'd be driving out. He coached us in baseball and football, and we'd be driving out to baseball games kind of in a little Western submarket. And we'd be passing buildings that he'd be, working on a development side or helping someone lease. And so it was always kind of there, he was always talking about it. And he was a very present dad, but on a lot of trips and stuff with the family, there was often phone calls where he'd be distracted or doing deals. And so it was always something that was kind of right in front of us. And then really when I was in school, I went to the University of Missouri, and I kind of toyed around. I did an internship with a general contractor, an internship with a logistics group here in town, Scarborough Logistics. And I kind of found that I was interested and curious in those things. But then I did an internship with Kessinger Hunter, and I got to see like I can have my hands in those worlds and industries, but also be on this path and just get to work with so many different, so many different ways to earn a living. That's one of the things I've loved is just, I might work with one client who is, filling the warehouse with literally toilet paper or paper towels or napkins. And then I'll go across the street and, I'm working with someone that's making pretzels or seasoning pretzels. It's just, there's all kinds of commodities, all kinds of different things. And I found it really interesting. And candidly, my dad, Dan, had built a great career for himself. And I saw that as an awesome opportunity to try and take the torch to the next generation. And so I came in pretty hot. I came in, literally, I walked for graduation on a Sunday and then was in the office on Monday. And a lot of my buddies were doing other things, but I kind of had, the strong word of, if you want to come work here, you need to come work here. And so that's what I did. And I needed to get going anyways, because 100% commission based, it's, you got to start making money as soon as you can so you can go live a little bit. So, but I've been here now 8+ years. And I just last year got in to myself and 3 other of our principals who've been here about the same amount of time, got to buy in last year as principals, which was really exciting. And so Kessinger Hunter, we're the oldest full service commercial real estate firm in Kansas City. We've been around for almost 150 years now. And we really are 2 stars that are the namesake are Bucky Kessinger, who is since passed. He passed away a handful of years ago. And he was actually good friends with my grandpa back in the day. My grandma and his wife are still good friends, where they live in a retirement home together. And so it's fun hearing stories from them. But Chuck Hunter is still our chairman, and he is still a very magnetic personality. And he does spend a lot of his time up in the Northeast. He's got a home up there. And so he's a lot less hands-on than he obviously was, because he's in his 80s now, but it's still awesome having him around and someone like him to bounce things off of. But so the firm was really, we kind of leaned into and grabbed our market share through those 2 guys and their reputation they built for the company, because they were stand-up guys and were well-known guys. And then, we've got a number of partners now, or principals now, that are that next generation that have really kept us, the powerful group we are in Kansas City, and really helped us continue to earn that credibility with clients and within Kansas City. And so that group has really done a good job, I think, of embracing the younger generation, myself and the others that have recently bought in. And it's really, I think it's a really exciting time right now at Kessinger Hunter. We were the Cushman Wakefield Alliance firm for, I think, 20 years or so in Kansas City.
Wow.
And when DTZ bought Cushman, the principals wanted to stay independent. They didn't want to merge offices, and so they stayed independent. And I would say the last handful of years, it's been an interesting dynamic, and we've kind of had a little bit of a looking in the mirror and, who do we want to be as we lean into the future? Because the commercial real estate world the landscape's really changing, and it has changed the last 10 years. And so, but what we're learning and excited about is that there's a lot of tools and technology that allow for shops like yours in Orlando and ours here in Kansas City to leverage better people and take advantage of that and almost be more nimble and flexible on behalf of clients and serve them better. And I'm sure I'm a little biased, but I like to think that we've got a pretty good thing going here. And through the SIOR network, we really have a great reach nationally and internationally. And so, to your point, I've worked with SIORs in a number of other markets, and it's always awesome knowing that you've got someone that is credible, has a good reputation, and is active in their market, and can bring that same value that you want to provide for your clients. And so, but really excited about what we're doing. The podcast has been a lot of fun. I'm sure you've enjoyed doing it too.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's like people ask me like, well, how are you doing deals and the podcast? But I really like I think there's a saying that if you really love what you do, it doesn't like feel like work, or you never work a day in your life or something like that. And that's like how I feel Because every time I have one of these podcasts, I learn something new, or someone hears something and I'll run into them at a chamber event, or someone will send me a DM on
Yeah.
Twitter and they're like, "Oh, this was so awesome. I really like resonated with this." Two things as you were talking about your firm that you're with is like the old timers reaching out and like investing in people and then having them come out. And there was another thing that I was going to talk about. Oh, I'm a CCIM and an SIOR, and I think both are incredibly
Yeah.
valuable. But I would say like CCIM tends to be better like on the education side of things. And when I became an SIOR, it exposed me because I've never worked for any other shop. This has been my own.
Yeah.
I had my friend qualify my brokerage. And so I've learned this all through like mentoring, which I think either good or
Oh
bad,
yeah. I mean, I
because
think
like
there's,
I've developed this firm to be exactly the way I wanted to be and like fit me and be very like bespoke and curated. But I would say like SAOR is like the whole business side of things. And I learned a lot more about even more about leveraging relationships. I think they take independent brokerages and then they give them additional tools, but then they also talk a lot more about development and how to do management fees and all these different things I never thought about. It was really incredible. That was one thing I was thinking about. And we'll talk about like, yeah, why don't we talk about what your experience is, and then we'll talk about old timers because I have a story about that.
well, what'd you say? What was the question about Mike's?
Oh, I said, so what's been your experience with SOR? Are you a CCIM as well, or
I'm not a
SIOR?
CCIM. I have to admit, I kind of I did two classes, and then I kind of kicked it by the wayside when I got all excited about doing SIOR, and I realized I might have some years ahead of me where I could actually make my production threshold, and so I prioritized SIOR, and
Mm-hmm.
I did. University of Missouri isn't the toughest school, but I did have an emphasis in finance and real estate, so I did have
Yeah.
some of that background education, which was helpful. But my experience with SIR has been incredible. So when I
Yeah.
first started, we had really kind of only left behind the CNW flag at Alliance. I think probably a year or 2 years before I jumped in. So when I first started, the principals were really emphasizing the importance of SIOR and that national reach. And so I actually got to go my first year to New York, which was an incredible conference. And I'm spoiled. I think I've been to 8 conferences now. So I've gotten to go to a lot of the conferences. And to your point though, it's always so invigorating going to the conferences because you
Mm-hmm.
hear from other brokers that are doing things maybe differently and maybe even a little bit better in other markets, and you can learn some best practices and confirm what you're doing is the right thing to be doing and things like that. And just connect further. And it's always reassuring hearing what everyone else is doing and understanding that, okay, there's other people out there like me. It's a really a great community. And so I've been lucky to have the mentors through SIR that I've found. And just, I can't also just but I can't not talk about how much fun it is. You know what I mean? Just going to those conferences, it really is a blast. Just hanging out with
Yeah.
like-minded folks and just hearing what kind of transactions other people are working on and just talking shop. So I've been very fortunate to be able to attend as many conferences as I have, and Kessinger Hunters really helped put me in the position that I'm in to be able to make that production threshold and to be able to attend those conferences. So, I feel blessed to be a part of it, and I'm really excited to see what it will grow to in the future. Because I think I've really noticed while I've been attending, I think they keep getting better and better. They really do. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
future is very bright for SIOR, and I think it's just it's a great tool and service to the end client at the end of the day too. Like it really, you can tell at those conferences that that's who SIR is trying to serve at the end of the day. Isn't necessarily just us, but the clients we're working for, because I think they know that that's the goal at the end of the day.
Well, I'm working on one deal right now, and it's not really, large, but I was able to use the pitch deck from from SAOR, and then like I modified it, and then I put in my particular details, and then I set it to the head of real estate for this company that has over like 5,000 employees, and they usually have this national relationship, but they're allowed to use someone local
Right.
if the local rep wants to work with the person. And it was really cool. I sent it out, and she's like, okay, of course we can work with you. And it's like, it's not going to but it's not going to make my, it's not a big deal, but it's
Right.
kind of cool to be able to like work with someone that I've gotten to know over like the last like 15 years and watch her growth within this, larger company. She's a friend of mine. And then her be able to like send it to, and I remember the very first call I had with like corporate real estate for this company. And and she's like, yeah, and I saw you're at SAOR. So like, I don't have any other questions.
Right.
Like, like you obviously know what you're doing. And it's interesting. I didn't even think about it until I had been doing Commercial Real Estate Influencer Summit. So CREI and SAOR started sponsoring it. And I'm like, I wonder if I qualify for that.
Right.
And so I went back and I'm like, oh, dude, I did it. I've done it. I've done it. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I submitted my stuff like that day. I'm like, oh, let's go. I'm going to get this. So, because I wasn't sure but then Beth Azor, who's really active in commercial real estate, she's always told me like, Amy, you're doing great. Like, but I always want to do better.
Right.
So, when you were talking about, this multi-generational brokerage, that there's been all these generations and the brokerage you are with has been around so long. One thing that put me in the role that I'm in today, I was actually behind the desk as a paralegal, and I was going to go to law school. This guy, Bob Hendry, my husband merged in with him for a little while. Okay. And he actually worked with the law firm that helped Walt Disney acquire all that land.
Oh, that's very cool.
I have some crazy stories of like corporate espionage, people breaking into the filing cabinets. Also, Walt Disney had an office in Orlando. Okay. That we looked to lease at one point, and there's like these gold ceilings and really ornate in one of the buildings downtown. The floor plates in this building, built like in the early 1900s, are only like 3,600 square feet.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And so he had like the top like penthouse store of this really like small building that's like absolutely dwarfed by other buildings. Like if you ever look at the skyline, I'll show you which one it is. But one thing was like Bob would walk by my desk like all the time, and he's just like, you have such great drive. You're so great with like the clients. You're so, so meticulous. And he's like, you really got to get out behind the desk. And like he started dragging me to like all of these like networking events. And at the time, it was really hard. I went to school full time and I worked full time. And then obviously, I'm getting paid to produce, as a paralegal, I have billable hours that I need to do. So then I have to make up, but it was well worth the investment to kind of get out there. And then, the opportunity came about for me to get into commercial real estate. And so I did. Yeah. And I don't regret it. But I probably wouldn't have had like the people skills and the confidence and the courage if it weren't for someone who'd been around a long time and told me some really cool stories.
I mean, I'm very fortunate with the mentors I've had. I mean, it really, I think it makes all the difference. There's folks that are great brokers that are maybe just a different breed that don't have that mentorship and they figure it out. But I think it's a pretty key ingredient to a successful career, because this first 5 or 10 years can be tough. The mentorship, I think, is just a huge aspect to your point. I mean, that it really is. And I have fun facts about Walt Disney, and I want to confirm with like a Google search real quick, but Walt Disney's original art studio was actually in Kansas City, which a lot of people don't realize that.
I heard that. Yeah. No, I see the documentary. I think you're right on that. Because I was surprised. I was listening to something the other day, and I heard that. And I was like, Kansas City, like of all different places. But I think, was he originally from there?
I'm going to Google it.
Wait, hold on. Joe Rogan stops and like fact checks things. Why can't we? So hold on.
Yeah, his original studio.
Walt Disney.
which I think there's a pretty cool project going on right now to save the building and kind of turn it into a museum.
Oh, his family moved there when he was 9 years old, and they lived at 3028 Bellefontaine.
Yeah.
And I guess it looks like their childhood home is still there. It looks like almost like a shotgun kind of. Is it the kind of house like almost like New Orleans looking?
Yeah, no, that would make sense. It's probably the same era.
He was in Kansas City's East Side when he was 9 years old.
Yeah, yeah. His original,
Huh.
his art and animation studies are all done here. Which Kansas City, it's not just a flyover state. You know, we do have a pretty amazing art community here that a lot of people, everyone knows we've got barbecue and the Chiefs, but we do have some pretty amazing art exhibits as well. So I just had to give that plug for KC, but.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I was watching. I don't know. I'm a bit of a nerd, so like at night, if I'm not listening to like podcasts, usually Joe Rogan actually,
Yeah.
or different things, or just like social media, whatever. I'll tend to watch some different documentaries, and I was like hearing about different cities, how they developed, or different influential people, or no. YouTube has so many different documentaries nowadays. It's
it's endless.
so easy to do. What do you do in your spare time?
Oh, I really like, tonight I'll probably go throw on the Royals game and just try and have a relaxing night. I spend a lot of time up at the gym too, and then I'm a single guy. I've got a cute lady I'm courting right now, trying to convince into being a girlfriend. But I've got two older siblings that are married and have 3 and 2 kids, and they live less than 5 minutes from me. So I get a lot of awesome uncle time.
So you're uncle to 5 kids?
Uncle to 5 kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is a lot of fun. They're all between the ages of 5 and 1. One of them's turning 6 in November, and he'll tell you he's been talking about it all year. So, but they're pretty fun. And then my younger brother actually lives out in. I'm very close to my family, but my younger brother lives out in Napa and is selling wine. But he just got engaged.
So you have 3 siblings?
Yep, 3 siblings.
You're one of 4?
So I was the middle of the 3 boys, and then we've got the queen bee sister who was the first and the oldest. So,
wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's super cool. Yeah, I only have 1 sibling, but I'm one of 11 grandbabies on my mom's side, and that's like really cool. And I on both sides I have a huge like family, and I love family. And then I also have what I call framily too, and like my best friend and her husband and his kids, we become like family, and we like travel together and do life together. And then obviously since I've gotten into commercial real estate, she was a stay-at-home mom, but she got interested in commercial real estate. So I helped her buy a building on Main Street in the town that she lives in, got it leased up, and now they're actually looking to buy more commercial real estate.
Awesome.
So it's really cool, like to be in something that can like inspire those that are like part of your family or your friends to like go and like try work to generate wealth and passive income. And it's a great vocation.
No, it really is. And I love all my clients, but it's been fun especially the last couple of months. I've got my best friend works in the M&A world, and he's working on a deal that has a large real estate portfolio. And he's always kind of bounced things off of me, with regard to real estate. But this is actually the first time where there's a portfolio that I've gotten to help him, evaluate, and we're probably gonna be taking it to market here soon, and getting to talk to a best friend about work all the time is pretty hard to beat, because we can nerd out on stuff together. And I've been joking with him, like he's a pretty like by the book guy, and historically he doesn't always answer my calls during business hours. But the last couple of months, he picks up anytime I call because he knows it's about work. So it's been pretty fun. So
actually, this kind of funny is like sometimes I'll get a break while driving to call my best friend, but every time like we don't have a deal going on, it's like voicemail, but now she wants another property, so she's answering every one of my
Yeah,
calls.
right.
Hmm.
At least we know
Huh,
when they're
huh.
motivated, right?
Well, yeah, they're answering our call. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that until we talked about it. Um, what do you see? Do you see any specific trends in your market? You primarily focus on industrial. I know, like in Orlando right now, we brought a lot of spec industrial to market, and just because of the cost of construction and those types of things, we're trying to make them larger bays, and but they're just like not moving. So now there's like talks about bringing them down to 25,000 square feet, like, or smaller, and subdividing them even irrespectively of that. But I mean, our vacancy is still like 6%, but
Right.
it was like 3,
Yep.
like before we got flooded with all that. That's kind of what's going on here. What do you see going on in Kansas City?
It's a little bit similar. We were fortunate. It seemed, I mean, like every market I think was on fire in a good way for a handful of
Right.
years there, especially right after the pandemic, but industrially speaking. But we were fortunate in the fact that a lot of the developers active in our market really kind of slowed down candidly at kind of the perfect time. Our spec deliveries really slowed down. We have a handful of 1 million square foot buildings, 1 million square foot buildings under one roof that came to market within the last 12, 18 months that have been struggling. But outside of that hopper, it's really it's really pretty healthy out there, even with the newer product. You kind of had some one-off projects developing that were putting a couple 200 or a couple 300,000 square foot buildings out there that have still had, I would say, pretty healthy absorption, similar to what I saw in the first half of my career before things got crazy and people were signing pre-leasing everything they could, which was wild. But so I would say we're fortunate. Similar. It sounds like our vacancies are similar. I think that big box, the bulk stuff is closer to that 7-8% range. But when you add in our overall market, it's really about 5% right now, which is still pretty
Okay.
darn healthy. So we've been fortunate. I think the timing of construction costs and all that becoming more problematic was almost a kind of a lucky card to draw for our market because the developers really slowed down and a lot of that bulk absorption has slowed down since then. So, and I think we learned as a market that it was a fun run for a couple years, but we really aren't a big bomber market. We're not the market, we're not an inland port. We're not Chicago or Dallas going to necessarily be seeing, multiple 500 and up 1,000 square foot deals every year. They're really, you maybe have 1 or 2 million square footers a year is, I think realistically that's a healthy year, so
Mm-hmm.
it got, I think we're lucky we didn't get out over our skis like I'm afraid some markets maybe did. But I think we've
Yes.
been, and historically, I think our market, a lot of the guys in our office and gals always talk about how we've been pretty fortunate in that we're generally a more conservative market. And so we haven't seen the high highs and the low lows that some of the other markets see. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of the institutional owners weren't all that prevalent in Kansas City, and they have become more prevalent, which can change things. But
Hmm.
I still think we're in a good spot. Things are certainly seeming to be dragging along this year compared to years prior. But and I feel like this was the consensus when I was talking to folks at SIOR, but I feel pretty bullish about 25 and 26. So I'm not. I'm still. I would love to be working on more transactions that are going to transact in the next, 2 to 3 months. But I'm very happy to be working on a lot of the big opportunities I've got in the pipeline for 2025 and down the road. So
Yeah, I have a number of things that are more, it's going to take some time to develop and put it together, and then be able to then, sell it, transact. And it's not as much the same like cadence and velocity of deals that like we had in the other years. Although, I feel like I have a bunch that's about to break
Right.
loose that I'm been working on for a while that are gonna hit like in the next like 90 days, which is good.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, right. I was just say, I've got a couple
You never know.
I've got some off market deals I'm working on. I'm like, I almost don't even want to talk about them because I don't want to jinx them.
No. We don't. My kids are 3 and 4, and they watch this show in Kanto. It's like we don't talk about Bruno, and so like I guess we're not supposed to talk about like too much. Like no, like we don't want to nix it. But no, I mean like the thing is though, regardless of the market that you're in, if you're like consistent, you have the same habits, like you set like certain goals, and you just keep in a disciplined way and be consistent and all of that, I think you'll be very successful, no matter what. So, but like maybe not as crazy successful, but I think people that maybe were more transactional and not relationship and like just enjoyed that run we had the last couple years, if they didn't have the same like foundation, they maybe aren't as good this year.
I think this year has been humbling for a lot of folks for sure. To your point, I agree completely, and I agree. I think it's all, I feel like I think it was maybe Bob Knackel who was talking about it in a recent video, or maybe even at the conference. But it's one of those businesses where it really is, if you put in you kind of get you get what you put into it, and it really. And I've learned that lesson. I had a great year a couple of years ago, and I kind of was all, I can, I'm a big shot. And then I realized, things can slow down if you aren't putting, shoe to pavement, and so and that's what I've been fortunate. We've really emphasized at Kessinger Hunter is, you got to go out and knock on doors and find opportunities, literally. And so that's what I'm focused on. And I've been having a lot of fun doing it, and, hope to keep doing it, and hope to keep having the good fortune of running into some good opportunities. So,
it's interesting. The Ken Ashley was on my podcast not too long ago. That's with Cushman Wakefield and does the CREI Summit. But he says that Melissa Alexander and Casey Flannery call it dock knocking.
Yeah.
And I always called it like door knocking, but they call it dock knocking. And I'm like,
it's kind of fun.
That's a good name for it. But yeah. Well, this has been really good. Believe it or not, we've been chatting for a while.
I was looking at the time. I was like,
wait, we got to land the plane. Yeah. Like, what else do we want to? Anything else we want to talk about before we conclude today?
Oh, I don't know if there's anything I've got written down or anything, but I really do appreciate you jumping on with me. I think it's been fun, and excited to see you at future conferences. And I love that you're doing a podcast. I think it's beneficial for ourselves as individuals from a branding standpoint, but I also think it's a great reach that we can help leverage for our clients too. And I think it just helps us gain that many more connections and opportunities that we can serve them with. So I think it's very cool you're doing it. I like to think we're on the cutting edge. I think there's always the jokes about, everyone's got a podcast, but I think there's a reason for it. So,
well, a lot of people do have a podcast, but you're close to 10 episodes in, or more than 10?
I think we're like 15 or 16. Yeah.
Oh, that is great. They say that like the statistics of podcasts that make it beyond that like 10 or 20%, and like people keep consistently doing it. And the magic is I have people listening all the way back to episode 1. Yeah. Like nowadays, and like looking at the metrics and all of that. So yeah, if anybody ever wants to ask how to start a podcast, feel free to reach out to me, or I'm sure Kurt's more than happy to share. But it's been a great tool, and now I know someone to call for industrial in Kansas City for sure. So, and then you know who to call in Orlando.
Absolutely.
So it's awesome. Oh no, well, you're full service, so I just know who to call. Period. In Kansas City, and then you'll figure it out.
We've got partners in our office that I can connect you with. So.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to hear Kurt and I chatting for our respective podcasts, and just make sure to like and subscribe and download these, and we'll keep bringing them your way.